How would you like to increase the speed at which you sell your books? How would you like to increase the speed at which you make money from your book idea or at which you sell your books? For you, if you're listening to me right now and whenever you make a sale of your book, you have to wait 60 days to 90 days before you ever see the monies that you actually got paid for your hard work as an author in your bank account, then this is something that you need to listen to. This is going to change the game for you, because as an author of 17 books, one of the greatest frustrations that I've experienced having my books on platforms like Amazon KDP, like Ingram Spark, like Draft to Digital is that you have to wait painfully for 60 days or 90 days before you get paid, even after you make a sale. And then to even make a sale is difficult on those platforms because those platforms are heavily saturated with a lot of books, right? And so it has become a concern for many authors. And this was something that I discovered when I wrote my first book. That was many years ago, about 10 years ago. When I wrote my first book, I thought I was going to be a gazillionaire. I thought I was going to be a millionaire right out of the gate. I thought that I was going to be rich and famous right out of the gate just because I wrote my first book. And then I wrote my first book, I put it on Amazon, I put it on other platforms, and I woke up the next day and I saw no sales to report. I kept the faith and I kept trying and I kept hoping and wishing and praying that I would make a lot of money from my book on Amazon or on other platforms where I had my book, but the story remained the same. And I also came to discover that anytime I made a sale, it came from my own personal marketing effort. It came from my own personal communication effort and promotion effort. But the idea that was sold to me back then was that Amazon had millions of people, trooping into that site and buying things from that site, buying books from that site, which is true, right? And I'm going to explain to you why that is a flawed reasoning. That's a flawed way of thinking about your book as an author, right? But I was told back then that because it has a very huge traffic, it has a massive traffic, it controls 40% of the book market, it was a very smart play to have your books there and expect to become rich, right? But that was not my experience. And then I woke up one day and I was like, why ain't I rich and famous yet? I've written a book. Why ain't I rich and famous yet? If you've ever asked yourself that question, or if right now you are wondering, why am I not even rich now? I've written 1, 2, 3, 4 books, 5 books, 10 books. Why am I not yet a bestseller? Well, you have believed the lie about what it means to be a bestseller. And if you want to learn more about that lie and how to overcome that lie about what it means to be a bestseller, I have an episode on that. I have an episode titled The 4 White Lies That's Keeping Authors Broke. You can go check that out. But for the purpose of today's conversation, I'm going to teach you how to sell your books faster than you would have sold it on Amazon, Lulu, Draft to Digital, Ingram Spark, or whatever other platform that's out there. And so why is this significant to sell your books fast? Why is this significant that you increase the speed at which you make money from your book or at which you sell your book? Now, the reason is this: because wealth has a need for speed. You're making enough money that you need right now to become a millionaire. The only problem is that you're making that money slow, right? So if you earn $25,000 a year and you earn that for 40 years, that will amount to $1 million. But if you compare yourself to someone who earns $25,000 a day, it means that in 40 days, that person would have become a millionaire. That person will have made $1 million. Now, what's the problem? Both of these two persons actually made the same amount of money. They actually made $25,000. But the problem is that one of them took too long to make $25,000. It took him a year to make $25,000. And so he had to wait for 40 years before he ever made $1 million, while the other one made $25,000 fast. And so he was able to make $1 million in 40 days. And so that's the principle that I'm going to be sharing with you. I'm going to be sharing with you 10 key fundamental principles that can help you increase the velocity at which you sell your books, increase the pace at which you generate money from your book. Now, if this sounds interesting, I want you to stick with me, listen to this to the end, and watch this to the end. Now, you may wonder, why am I teaching you the principles instead of just teaching you the strategies and the tactics? Well, there are 4 levels of teaching. The first level is teaching tactics. That is to teach the what. And then the second level is to teach strategy. That is to teach the when. And then the third level is to teach principles. That's when you teach the laws governing how the things that you are teaching about work. And then the fourth level is teaching essence, that is teaching from the source. And I learned all of this from Myron Golden, right? But the point I'm trying to make to you is that I'm teaching you the principles to increase the sales of your book, to increase the velocity at which you sell your books, to increase the speed at which you make money from your book. Because if I teach you the principles, the underlying laws governing the results that we are trying to help you accomplish, it doesn't matter the strategies or the tactics that you employ. If the principles are properly listed into those strategies and tactics out there, it's going to work for you. And it won't matter where you put your book. It won't matter whether your books are on Amazon. It won't matter whether your books are on D2D or draft to digital. It won't matter whether your books are on your own platform. What would matter is that these principles will get you the results that you desire. Right? And so the problem with many authors out there is that they are engaging tactics without understanding the principles governing those tactics. They are trying to use strategies that they have no idea what the strategies is all about. But in today's conversation, I'm going to be teaching you from a principalistic point of view, so that when you absorb these principles, you would have exactly what you need to make the principles work for you, and you'll be able to sell your books faster than you would have sold if you put it on any other platform. Now, the first principle I'm going to be teaching you is the principle of automation. What is automation all about? Automation simply means to move your message to the masses without moving. That's my own definition of automation. Automation is what helps you move the masses with your message without moving. And what does that mean? With automation, you can turn your book to a cash flow machine while you live your life without wasting time, without trying to be a ninja on social media, without twerking on social media. With the use of automation, you can generate increased income. You can increase the speed at which you sell your books without putting in too much effort, without necessarily increasing your overhead, without necessarily increasing the effort that you put in. And what is automation all about? Now, I asked ChatGPT what is automation, and here's what ChatGPT told me. He said, automation is letting software do your repeatable, rule-based task for you automatically, so your message keeps moving when you're not. Now, that is exactly what automation is. And for the purpose of this conversation, we are going to adopt that definition of automation. And so you want to figure out a way to automate your processes. You want to figure out a way to automate your sales. You want to figure out a way to get people to buy from you and to get them coming back to buy from you without you having to do repeated tasks, without you having to work like a ninja, without you having to do a million things, by using software, by using technology, by using the internet, right? Automation enables you to put the sales of your book on autopilot. And so my question for you is, how can you set the sales of your book on autopilot? How can you automate the sales of your book? How can you increase the velocity at which you sell your books without increasing the effort that you put into trying to sell your book? The thing is that all the third-party platforms out there will not do that for you, and this is where most authors have made a mistake. They think that you can put your books on draft to digital, or put your book on Amazon KDP, or put your book on Ingram Spark and go to sleep. They think that that is automation, but that is not automation. Putting your book on all these platforms is like putting your book on a shelf, on a virtual shelf. Now, think about this. If you put your book on a shelf that has millions of other books, what are the chances that someone who's interested or who will benefit from what you have put down in that book, what are the chances that that person would actually see your book, be interested in your book, and buy the book amidst all the distractions out there? Now, this is the problem, and this is the number one reason why most authors are broke like a joke and ready to choke. They publish their book online, in online platforms, and then they go to sleep thinking that these online platforms will automatically sell their books for them. They mistake these platforms for a sales team. But guess what? These platforms are nothing near your sales team. And if you dial in automation correctly as an author, you will not even need to hire a sales team, because software will do the work for you. It will do the repeatable, boring, automatable task in your business for you to help you get your sales out. And guess what? You won't have to wait for 60 days to 90 days before you get paid. Now, here's why it's a terrible idea to wait for 60 days to 90 days before you get paid when you put your book on those platforms. The reason it's a terrible idea is that when you get paid, the monies get paid immediately by the customer. Now, for whatever reason, these platforms would hold your money, and that money will no longer be the same 60 days from now or 90 days from now. If I give you $20 today and you keep that money under your pillow, in 30 days that money would have been subjected to depreciation. If I give you $30,000 today and you keep that money under your pillow, in 90 days that money will have been subjected to the forces of inflation, and because it was not put into investment vehicles, that money would lose its value, the value it had 90 days before. So when you sell your book, the money you get paid that does not come to your account immediately, it loses value over time because of the time value of money. When money is not invested, over time that money depreciates, but when money is invested, over time that money appreciates. So when you put your book on all these platforms and they hold your money for whatever reason for 60 days to 90 days, over time that money loses value. That money is no longer what it was when it was paid to you, right? So how does it sound that you're going to do the hard work, you're going to put your sweat and blood, you're going to work, you're going to write, conceptualize your ideas, polish it, and then put it together, proofread it, edit it, format it, and then publish it. You're not going to get paid all this while. And then when someone finally miraculously buys your book on these third-party platforms, you still have to wait for a painful 60 to 90 days before you ever get rewarded for your labor. Well, for me, that doesn't sound like a sustainable model. Why? Because your bills don't wait, right? Your bills don't wait. Life doesn't wait for you. Every minute, every second that you breathe in air, you are spending money. Every minute, every second your bulb is on, you are spending money, and you are going to be paying money. You are losing money at a rate per second, and you're expecting to be making money after 60 days and 90 days. That is a terrible business model. That's a terrible business idea, and you need to fix that if you want to be wealthy as an author. And that's why you need automation. With automation, you can have a funnel, a book funnel, with which you can sell your books on autopilot. Now that brings me to the next principle that can help you sell your books fast, and that's the principle of distribution. You want to figure out ways to distribute your book in different formats, in different forms, so that you can sell your books faster, right? Because the more formats that you can distribute your book into, the faster you can sell your book. For example, let's consider water, right? Now this is a bottle of water, right? Now this water is in liquid form, but this same water can be transformed into solid form as ice, right? When this water turns to ice, it becomes a solid. Now this same water can be turned into gaseous form, and when it turns into a gaseous form, it becomes gas, right? It evaporates and it becomes gas. It goes into the air. Now when this water is in liquid form, it is limited inside this bottle, right? But when I pour this water out into other containers, right? Let's pour this water into an empty container, right? So that you can understand distribution. Now, when you pour this water into this container, you see that now we have this water in a different format. Now you see that this water has been distributed because it's in liquid form, but as long as it remains in liquid form, it's still limited inside this container. So one way to distribute your book is to distribute your book, the content of your book, right? You want to distribute it into other formats. Now let's say the content of your book is water. The transformation you have packaged in your book is water, and then this is a blog, and then this is the book. You are going to take this book and put it into a blog. Take the same book. Let's assume now that this is a podcast. You're going to take this content of this book, distribute it into a podcast. You're going to take the content of this book, distribute it into a YouTube video, right? And then the moment you do that, you are dispersing the transformation in different forms. You are distributing it in different forms. You're making it possible for different people to consume your material, to consume your transformation, to receive your transformation in a way that suits them. Because many different people around the world, millions and billions of people around the world, consume content differently, right? So you want to distribute your content, you want to distribute your transformation that you have packaged in your book in these different forms so that people can benefit from it, right? Even for a fiction author, you may be wondering, how can this be applicable to me as a fiction author? Fiction authors can distribute their books into playwrights. They can distribute their books into movies. They can distribute their books into dramas. They can distribute their book into series of movies, right? This is the principle of distribution. When God created man, God said, be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth. That word multiply also speaks about distribution, right? When you plant a seed, it germinates and then it produces a tree. That tree produces fruits. That's another way to multiply your impact, by distributing your results, distributing the transformation that you can bring into the marketplace into different forms in a way that people can benefit from it. And a simple way to describe this is to build bridges beyond borders, right? Now, another way to see this is that when you write a book, for example, that book is like a container and it's a conveyor of the transformation that you have packaged in that book. The sad truth is that many authors do not package transformation in their books. They only package information in their book. So your book must be a transformation product for you to make this work, right? And if your book is just merely an information product, you want to extract the core transformation from that book and turn it into a transformation product. Now, but if you're not careful, the transformation that you have packaged in your book can be lost inside the book. It can be forgotten inside the book. And this is where many authors are. And that's why it's a terrible idea to think that after you publish a book, then you can go to sleep. After you publish a book, then you can, take a nap and expect money to fall on your lap. No, because that book is a conveyor of transformation. And if you're not careful, that transformation can be locked up and shut up inside this book like a cage. It's your job to open up that book and begin to reveal the transformation that is shut up inside this book. And this is where most authors also make a mistake. They think that by concealing the transformation in their book, by hiding the information in their book and telling people to go get their book before they can find out those information and transformation, they think that by doing that, they will sell their books. They think that if they reveal the details or the secrets that they have discovered and packaged in their book, people won't buy their book. But that's a big fat lie. People will buy your book more when you reveal things to them and not when you conceal things from them. When you conceal things from them, they are going to be repulsive. They are going to be skeptical about even buying your book. So that's why the concept, this principle of distribution is very fundamental if you want to succeed as an author and you want to sell your book faster than you are currently selling it, right? Now the next principle that will increase the velocity at which you sell your books is the principle of communication. Communication is very fundamental to everything we do as authors, right? In fact, the very fact that you wrote a book means that you're interested in communication. But one of the biggest problems with communication that most authors face is that they think that communication has happened even when it has not happened. So you want to get better at communicating. You want to get better at talking. You want to get better at writing. And how do you do that? By making your communication crisp and clear. By making your communication crystal clear. Now, one problem I've seen with authors, and I talk to authors every month, I work with authors every other week. One problem I've seen with authors is that they are not clear in their communication. They want to sound clever instead of sounding clear. Well, I don't blame them, because we went through a system of education that rewards complexity over simplicity, right? And so most authors think that by sounding clever, even though people don't understand you, by sounding clever, then you would impress the marketplace. But that's not how it works in the marketplace. The marketplace will not reward you for sounding clever. They will reward you for sounding clear. And the reason why most authors get passed over by most of their clients or most of their readers is because they are not clear in their communication. And it starts from the way you title your book. The title of your book speaks volume to how much of a communicator you are. When I hear or read the title of a book, the first thing that comes to mind is, this person knows how to communicate. This person knows how to communicate in a way that is clear, that is crystal clear. And then there are some book titles that I see that it's just easy to see that communication is broken, right? There's a breach in communication right there. So your job as an author, if you want to sell your books faster, is to fix your communication. Stop trying to sound clever in the marketplace. Stop using industry lingo. Stop using techno babble in your book titles. Stop using language that only belongs to an esoteric class. Stop using language that only people that belong to an exclusive class can understand, right? If you want to sell your book to the masses, if you want to make impact in the world, your communication must be so clear that even a third grader can understand, right? Now the next principle that I'm going to share with you is the principle of transformation, and I already touched on it previously in one of my other points, but I want to speak to you about that idea of transformation, because your book must be a transformation product and not an information product if you want to move your books faster, right? Most authors, they claim to write a book, but all they've written is just an information product, a dense information product full of junk that people can hardly understand or hardly benefit from. They write their books like a thesis. They write their book in a way that is so difficult to understand. And I was like that before. So if you made that mistake, or if you're making that mistake, don't feel sad, don't feel bad, don't feel disappointed, because this is a common mistake that we make. And the reason why we make this mistake as authors is that we went through school and we read textbooks that were so dense, so difficult to understand, so difficult to get transformation from, and so we come out of those institutions where we get rewarded for being able to memorize information in these dense textbooks, memorize information that does not bring transformation, memorize information that becomes useless the moment you graduate, memorize information that's not useful in the marketplace. You memorize all that and you get rewarded for that. And so when you come out of school, your natural instinct is to create another replica of that information product, to create what looks like a textbook. One of the challenges I had when I was in high school was most of the books that we were given and forced to read and forced to memorize were textbooks that did not carry any transformation, right? They carried a bunch of information that did not really do us much good, apart from being a material for memorization. Now, so when we come out of that institution, we come out of that system, we want to now display our cleverness in the marketplace, and then we now communicate in a way that is complex. We communicate in a way that people don't understand, except they are also highly educated like us. And so it looks like we want to show up our education instead of providing a transformation, right? So you want to learn how to provide a transformation and sell that transformation if you want to sell your books faster. How do I mean? You want to sell the promise and not sell the pages. Most authors, they sell the pages when they're trying to sell their book. They'll be like, oh, it's a 300-page book, and so because it's a 300-page book, I'm selling it for $30. You're going to enjoy it because it's a 300-page book. Nobody cares how many pages your book is. The first thing they care about is, how will your book change my life? How would your book change my emotional state? How would your book change my financial state? How would your book change my spiritual state? How would your book change my physical state? If there's no clear before and after that your book can offer to your potential reader or potential client, then that book is not a transformation product. And I say this without fear of contradiction. That book is an information product, and you want to fix that if you want to sell your books faster. Because when you fix that, your book becomes a movement. It becomes easy for people to say yes to your book. So sell the promise and not the pages. Sell the shifts and not the sheets, right? Sell the shift in mindset. Sell the shift in lifestyle. Sell the shift in experience. Sell the shift in value. Sell the exchange in value. Sell the shift and not the sheets in your book, not the sheets of paper in your book, right? So that's what transformation is all about. And that's the principle that you need to bake into your book to make it sell faster, right? So if you're listening to this and you're reading a book that is an information product, don't despair. You can fix that using what I've just shared with you. Now, that brings me to the fifth principle that can help you sell your books faster, and that's the principle of motivation. You must understand the psychology behind why people do things. When you understand the psychology behind why people do things, it becomes easy to motivate them, to give them a motive for them to take action or buy your book or buy your course or buy your program. You want to become masterful at finding out the motivation behind your ideal reader. Most people don't even have a motivation in mind when they're writing their books or when they're marketing their books or when they're trying to sell their books. And that is a very big no. That is a very big disadvantage. You must figure out a way to bake in motivation into your book. Bake in what I call pre-print motivation into your book. When you bake that into your book, people become motivated to buy your book for their own reasons. People become motivated to promote your book for their own reason. That's when people begin to order 50 copies, 100 copies, so that they can distribute to their friends and family, so that they can distribute in their organization, so that they can distribute in the marketplace, or so that they can distribute to their network. Why? Because you have baked in a motivation that has now caused them to take ownership of your book, and it now feels like it's their own thing. They have taken it. Your book now has become a movement. Your book now has gained momentum, and so when that momentum is gained, it is difficult to stop it. It is difficult to not make money. It is difficult to not sell your books fast. You must bake preprint motivation into your book. You must take advantage of the principles of motivation and figure out the motives behind people's buying decisions. Figure out the motive behind your reader reading that book. Why would someone want to read a book about igniting creativity? Why would a reader want to read a book about the maternal journal? There was someone who wrote a book titled The Maternal Journal, and he sold millions of copies of that book to one person. When you bake in preprint motivation into your book creation, selling becomes effortless because the people take ownership of the sales conversation. They begin to tell their friends about it. They begin to tell their loved ones about it, right? And selling now becomes less of a push. It becomes less of something of pressure. People take ownership of it. People see it as a blessing to have the book, to buy the book, and to sell the book on your behalf. You want to remove that burden from your shoulder. If you're currently having the burden of sales on your shoulder, it means you've not baked in the motivation of the people into your book. You've not written your book from the pain of the people, but you've written it from your preferences. So it seems like you wrote the book for you, and that's why you and you alone is responsible for marketing the book and selling the book. But when you bake preprint motivation into your book, people will take ownership of the sales, take ownership of the marketing, take ownership of the momentum of the book without you begging, without you yelling, without you trying. Right? So now that brings me to the next principle, the sixth principle that you want to bake into your book system so that you can sell books faster than on any other platform. Now, the sixth principle is the principle of imagination. You want to train your imagination to help you claim higher remuneration. The bigger you are able to envision solutions for a large pool of people or a big pool of people, the better you're going to be able to charge for the transformation you can potentially provide for them. Most authors do not use their imagination to the best of its capacity, and that's because they only think about themselves. They don't think about the people. They don't obsess about the problems of the people. To be very masterful at the use of your imagination to create cash flow, you must learn to observe. You must learn to listen to the marketplace. You must learn to observe the marketplace, and you must learn to be concerned about the marketplace and not yourself. Many authors will say, I want to write a book so that I can tell my story. Nobody cares about your story. The only person who cares about your story was your mom, right? And your mom doesn't even care that much because she was right there when it happens. She's not interested in reading it all over again and reliving the experience, right? So you want to write because you want to help people make their story better. And even if you're going to tell your story in between the lines, you want to do it with a goal, with an intention to help them achieve their results. You want to do it for their own reasons and not for your reasons. And that brings me to the next principle that you need to bake into your book to make it sell faster. And that's the principle of unification. Unification speaks of unifying resources in a way that brings unity and produces results. To do that, you want to leverage the law of leverage, right? You want to learn how to use people in your network, learn how to use people in your contact, in your connection as leverage, right? And you can do this. There are many ways you can do this, even on social media. For many of you listening to me, you have 100 followers, 200 followers, 500 followers, 1,000 followers on social media. How are you leveraging that? How are you unifying that resource? Do you know that that is a resource? How much are you showing up so that you can get them on your team, get them on board with your idea, right? Where many authors miss it is that they just show up one day and they tell people that they want to write a book and they want to launch a book. They fix a date, they fix everything. They do not unify resources. They do not engage people to find out, how they can leverage the resources in their network. They do not leverage resources at their disposal. They just want to write a book for their reasons, and they just fix a date without caring about the people in their network, without figuring out how they can create a win-win situation for the people that they want to work with, so that people are invested in the process of getting their books out and getting their message out. You want to learn how to unify resources, and the best way to unify resources is to always look out for a win for the other person before you look out for a win for you. You want to figure out win-win situations. How? By leveraging affiliates. You want to leverage partnerships, affiliates with similar people in your industry or with people in your network. And you want to do it in a way that is not coming off as selfish. You want to do it in a way that is mutually beneficial. When you figure out a way to make partnerships or create partnerships that are beneficial, where you have a connection with someone in your network that has a list of people that they can send messages to, or that has a community, and then you have a product, you have a solution, and you can unify those resources. You can create a unison of thinking and a unison of approach with them. It becomes easy to move your books faster without relying on a complex system that does not have your best interest at heart, without putting your books in virtual shells to collect virtual dust. Now, the next principle that you need to bake into your book sales to increase the speed at which you make money from your book is to bake in the law and the principle of delegation. You want to learn how to delegate tasks. You want to learn how to build a team. You want to learn to work with people who are good at what you are bad at by buying back your time. You want to learn how to pay people to do the things, to do the boring stuff that they enjoy but you hate, right? Employ people, hire people for $20 per hour, $30 per hour, or whatever price floats your boat. Hire them, pay them to reduce your overhead, to declutter your system, to create more bandwidth for you to focus on what you are good at, which is writing, publishing, speaking, and selling, right? And then you leave the boring stuff to people who love doing those boring stuff while you pay them. And that's how you delegate. You delegate tasks to these people, right? When you learn how to create value like that by using the principle of delegation, you free up mental bandwidth for yourself, mental bandwidth that you can now invest in developing the skill that actually moves the needle in your favor, and that's the skill of selling, right? Many authors cannot sell because they are overwhelmed with the redundant task of implementation. They have to write their book by themselves, they have to proofread it by themselves, they have to edit it by themselves, they have to do all of the boring things that they hate by themselves. So they have little or no time to actually focus on the thing that actually moves the needle and puts money in their pocket, which is selling. If that is you, you want to fix that. You want to delegate all these things that's taking up your time, whether it's things pertaining to your book or things pertaining to your personal life, like doing chores and all of that. You want to delegate that, hire someone, pay someone per hour to clean up your room, clean up your home, so that you can free up mental bandwidth to focus on the thing that actually pays the bills, the thing that actually moves the needle in your favor, the thing that actually brings in the cash flow, the thing that can speed up your book sales and increase the velocity at which you make money. You need to implement delegation in your system, in your book sales, so that you can focus on what you're good at and buy back your time that you would have spent doing things that you're bad at and still not get results that you would have got if you had paid someone. Now, when you pay someone to do something that you're bad at, there's two things involved. That person will do it with joy, and that person will do it faster, in less time, and that person will do it better, right? So you are getting more return for your money, and then you are getting your time back, time that is more valuable than money that you paid, that you can now reinvest into something that will generate even more money for you than you paid whoever you paid to help you out with that delegated task. That brings us to the next principle, the principle number 9 that you can bake into your book sales process to increase your sales, and that's the principle of intention. You want to figure out why. You want to ask yourself why should someone buy this? Why should someone be interested in this? Why should someone read this book? Why should someone sell this book on my behalf? Why should someone even be interested in partnering with me? Why should someone take ownership of this book? You want to also ask yourself, why should I even write this book? Why is this book the book that should be written? Why am I giving this book this particular title? Why? You want to dial in your intention correctly and ensure that it is directly connected to the need in the marketplace, because most authors make a very huge mistake, because authors have no training in business. So they only have training in writing and publishing. They lack training in profiting, right? They lack training in creating cash flow. And so you see authors, they will go print thousands of books, tens of thousands of books, without asking themselves, why should I print these books? Who would buy these books? They go put their books on Amazon without asking themselves why. And then even when they ask themselves why, they take the first answer without questioning the answers, right? I rather have questions that I can answer than have answers that I can question. You must learn to question the answers to find the real intention. You must learn to question the answers behind your why. That's the only way you get the real intention and fix the intention if that intention is misplaced, right? You want to ask yourself, why am I putting my book on Amazon? How much am I actually making? How much have I made since I put my book on Amazon? Right? Is that the best place to put my book? Can I do better? Are there other ways to sell my books without relying on Amazon? Even if I put my book on Amazon, even if I put my book on Draft to Digital or Ingram Spark, are there other things that I can do to enhance the potential of making sales faster? These are questions you must ask yourself, right? Why? Why can't you make money faster? Why do you have to wait for 60 days before you get paid as an author after working your butt off to write a book? Why do you have to wait for 90 days before you get your royalties after putting in your sweat and blood? And your bills don't wait, right? Life doesn't wait. Why do you have to wait? Why do you have to wait that long? What is the reason that you have to wait? Is there a better way? Is there a faster way? Wealth has a need for speed. You need to make money faster. You need to sell your books faster if you want to make a killing out of your gift, if you want to get paid what you're worth, if you want to make a living from making a difference. And so the number 10 principle that you need to bake into your book sales to increase the velocity of your sales and to make money faster from your books is that you want to take advantage of the principle of connection. You want to learn how to create connection with people in your community. You want to learn how to commune with people in a way that creates connection. You want to learn how to build a community through connection. You want to learn how to have conversations in a marketplace that creates connection. You want to learn how to create connection by the words on the pages of your book. You want to learn how to create connection by the words that come out of your mouth when you show up online or show up anywhere to speak, whether speaking relating to your book or speaking about things not related to your book. You want to learn how to bake in the principle of connection, because when you have people who are connected, these people become your super fans and they help you build your movement, and that is a recipe for success as an author. I'm going to leave it here for now, and before I close today's conversation, I'm going to go through the 10 different principles that you need to bake into your book system, into your book sales, so that you can sell faster than you're currently selling, so that you can sell your books faster than you sell when you put your books on any other platform, when you put your book on virtual shelves. Maybe you have a book right now that's collecting dust in your basement. If you go through these 10 different principles and you figure out ways to bake it into your book, you'll see better results. And the first one is automation. You want to learn how to move masses with your message without moving. The second one is distribution. You want to learn how to build bridges beyond borders. The third one is communication. You want to learn how to cash in on clear communication. The fourth one is transformation. You want to learn how to sell the promise and not the pages, sell the shift and not the sheets. The next one is motivation. You want to learn how to build strong momentum with preprint motivation. And then the next one is imagination. You want to train your imagination to claim more remuneration. The next one, which is the seventh one, is unification. And under unification, we spoke about how to leverage the law of leverage. And then we have the number 8 principle, which is delegation. The principle of delegation talks about buying back your time. We also have the principle of intention, which is figuring out a clear why that tells you why. And then the final principle that I shared in today's conversation, which is the principle of connection. Platforms don't buy books, people do. Commune with community, create connections. I'm going to leave it here for now. I hope this blessed you. If you enjoyed this and you'd like to learn how to fix your book sales problem, I want to invite you to a 5-day challenge called the Publishing Profits Challenge, where I teach authors all around the world how to fix their book sales problem. In 5 days, you're going to be able to fix your book messaging, your book marketing, your book methods, your book monetization, and your book momentum. The link is below in the description or in the show notes. Click that link and go grab a ticket and join me for the next Publishing Profits Challenge. Till then, have a good one and bye-bye.